Welcome to High-End Expert Stage. My name is Paul Miller. I'm the guy you've never heard of and you never see on social media. My famous colleagues here, Jamie Beesmans, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, certainly. My name's Jamie Beesmans. I'm based in the Benelux, and I'm the editor-in-chief of a magazine called Forward Magazine. I also contribute to Hi-Fi News. And finally, I'm the vice president of the ICE Association, which is an association of about 50 reviewing media, magazines and websites.
Thank you, Jamie. And Jim Austin from Stereophile.
Yeah, that's me. I'm Jim Austin. I have the honor to be only the third editor in the history of Stereophile, following Jay Gordon Holt and John Atkinson. Those are big shoes to fill, but it's a privilege. And anyway, I'm happy to be here.
Mm-hmm. And Rocco from Audio Review in Italy.
Yes, my name is Rocco Patriarca, and I am editor-in-chief of Audio Review, a historic magazine in Italy, 45 years. And I'm an expert in the expert group of ISA for Car Audio too. And that's all.
Thank you, everybody. And in that chair there is Matthias Boda from Stereo Magazine. He's a lot quieter than normal at the moment, and hopefully he will be, he's doing a lot of presentations. He'll be along towards the end to join in. So the purpose of this discussion, and feel free to, once we've gone through the preamble, to ask questions, is just to have a look at how hi-fi reviewing, how we look at equipment, has changed over the years. So I want to show you this. Yeah, okay. I'm the editor of Hi-Fi News. This is the world's oldest hi-fi magazine, 70 years old. And when this was first published in 1956, people still had one loudspeaker, one channel of an amplifier. It was 2 years later that the stereo LP was launched. And then, of course, the big discussion was, stereo, is that a thing? Is it worth buying another loudspeaker? So that was then. If you were to go back through the archives of this magazine in the 1950s, early 1960s, you wouldn't really recognize it in terms of how we review now. So it was entirely engineering and functional based reviewing. There was no discussion of sound quality. That came quite a bit later. So in the early days, it was all measurements. It was all engineering focused. What controls a tuner or an amplifier might have had. If it was a loudspeaker, it was a discussion about, you know, if you had to build your own cabinet, that kind of thing. And no discussion of sound quality. There may be something at the end along the lines of this had a nice tone, but that will be it. So it was really quite some time later. It depends on where you are in the world, very late 60s up to mid 70s. This concept that equipment actually could sound different started to, you know, become a thing. Now, up until kind of the mid 1970s, if you had a turntable that had a low enough wow and flutter, had a low enough rumble performance, then they're all the same thing. Didn't occur to anyone that they might sound different. And when, if you like, a new breed of journalists were coming in that time and were starting to talk about this, there was, you know, some really big arguments between the old guard and these new reviewers. And it took quite some time for that to evolve. So I think at this point, before we move into web reviewing and YouTube and everything, I'll invite Rocco to discuss audio review. You started in 1981, which is just before the digital revolution, CD in 1982-83. And you were on the cusp of this revolution in hi-fi reviewing.
Yes, and in the 70s in Italy, it was a different number of magazines, of hi-fi magazines. We call hi-fi, but the definition of hi-fi was later. And in one of hi-fi, there was a group of reviewers that decided to exit and found in 81 this kind of magazine. Since the beginning, the magazine was an electroacoustic magazine more than a hi-fi magazine. But one third of the magazine was included inside, in one third, about music. We wrote about music. The idea was speaking about music and speaking about the machine to reproduce the music. Only later in 19, when in the magazine, together with the group of engineers that make the position and make measurement, the first investment in the group of people that found the magazine was to buy the measurement equipment. And in the 19, it was added inside a part that we called Audio Club. That was only for listening experience. And the magazine grew up very, very fast when we put inside the magazine both engineering, measurement, and listening, both in the different philosophy of Hi-Fi inside the same magazine. And now we are going on with the new technologies and the new spaces to speak about Hi-Fi and the result of our test.
So Rocco's magazine was illustrative of magazines which are around today. Many of them started in the 1980s. And of course, when we get through to the mid-1990s, that's when the internet starts to take hold. And one of the first and possibly the most now important in terms of its scope was the Stereophile website, which was started by a guy called John Iverson and, of course, John Atkinson, who everybody knows, the long-term editor of Stereophile. And that's an incredible resource now, that website, but it started 1995, didn't it, Jim?
I think that's right. There might have been a little bit in 94, but very much in the middle of that decade.
And was it really the magazine content online? What did it look like in 95?
That is how it started, and has mostly continued that way until recent years. We viewed it as just a different way of disseminating the same information. So, it would be published first in the magazine in print, and then it would go up online some period later. Eventually, we got into a pattern where I don't know why this happens, but in the U.S. at least, the date on the magazine is the month after it actually shows up in your mailbox or on the newsstands. So the July issue comes in early June. So throughout the month of June, we would be putting up, I say we, I was not part of it yet at that point, but we would be putting up the stories from the July issue throughout the month of June, an article every couple of days. Okay. There was no original content for the web at that point.
So I'll throw in a little publishing thing here. The cover date of a magazine never relates to real life. And normally it's like for us, we publish 13 times a year. So we publish every 4 weeks because there are 13 4 weeks in a year rather than the 12 months. So that's why we end up out of sync. We're always, the cover date is always well ahead of the real date. So anyway, so back to the topic at hand. That's website. And we were discussing before we came on, we think YouTube started in terms of video form reviewing about 2005 onwards. And of course, the pace of that has tremendously picked up, particularly through COVID. We saw a lot of very good professional presenters basically moving into the hi-fi space. So I think I'd move over to Jamie now, because you were brought on with FWD specifically to look at online, weren't you?
Well, the story is slightly more complicated because Forward Magazine is actually only about 20 years old. At the time, it was a print magazine, to make that very clear. The idea was that you had a lot of traditional mags, but the hi-fi business as such was changing a lot as well from the mid-90s onwards. You remember that time people would say that vinyl was totally dead. It will never be seen. And so that was obviously very correct. But streaming wasn't really there yet. It was obvious there was some second digital revolution heading our way. And this also meant there was a new group of consumers that maybe did not have that background in hi-fi, the traditional hi-fi from the 70s or the 80s. And we wanted to make a magazine for that audience. But that's one thing. Now, actually, I was brought into a publishing house in the end of the 90s, which was it was a print-based publishing house with a test lab. with quite a big editorial team. And I was the one guy that had to tell these guys, well, there's something like the internet and we need to think about this. We need to think about our process. And this is, again, something from the publishing world. Most readers or viewers see a finalized product. You see the video, you see an article, but there's a whole production process before that. The way magazines create content is actually quite complicated. It involves more people than just the reviewer. I think that's an important point to make. And one of the things I want to talk about, I don't know if you want to go straight to that.
Yeah, please.
But
please do.
When I look at hi-fi reviewing, one of the big changes for me is that up till about the end of the 90s, begin 2000s, the format was basically a print format, and a print format is it's relatively rigid. It has a certain length. It has to be finished on a certain date. If you don't do that correctly as a reviewer, you will be in trouble. You'll have somebody like Paul being very angry at you. But reviews had to be compact because you had to maybe put them on 4 pages or 6 pages, which meant the reviewer had to evaluate a product, think very hard about what he wanted to say, also had to really interpret what the intent was of the product, but also think about the people that were going to use it. So it's actually quite an intellectual endeavor. But what have we seen happening now? Basically, if you publish online, there's no reason to be limited to, say, 2,000 words. And it's the same with video. There's no reason to have a video of 15 minutes. It's in fact far more interesting to have one of 45 for all kinds of economic reasons. And that means that hi-fi reviewing has, for a great part, become very long form, which is great for certain types of readers who want to know everything. So a review becomes very completist. But it also means this, the evaluation becomes very flat. It becomes spread out throughout the whole review. And I think that's good for a certain public, but it's also a pity that it means that there still always are reviews like that in hi-fi news, in stereophile, in audio review that really get to the point and to the essence. And that's what's certainly a difference that has turned up now.
Yeah, I mean, yes, with yes, we've all been told that print publishing is dead. It's no more dead than vinyl or any other physical media. It's actually doing pretty well. But yes, the production of a magazine is very different from the work we do when we're posting it on a website, because everything has to fit on a page. Copy has to be edited, has to flow correctly, and it's a different experience when you're reading a magazine. You have a spread, you have access points on a lot of psychology, if you like, goes into the design of these pages, so that you can pick it up and you can engage very easily in different positions rather than working out where you are on a particular point in a video. So it's a different skill set. So Rocco, do you want to talk about what you do online and how you work online?
Yeah, in our experience, the online review is a part of on paper review. That means that we publish only the same article and the report of the same article. So we just add some kind of report from shows from Munich, for the Las Vegas, and in video some different kind of shows, but not more than the content of the magazine. So we are focused on the magazine, on the paper, and we have a part of reviewer that it's most important part of our incoming. So it's important that we continuing to produce the content inside the magazine and put a vehicle as a printed magazine as usual, instead of make the some kind of work that is not our direct work. It's not down.
And of course, the other thing is with print, it's there forever. We can't. If you make a mistake, it's there forever. You can't just bang the copy up and then worry about fixing it later. It's there. So it's again a very different discipline. Now, we can throw this open to the audience. Is there anything you have a bunch of very experienced editors and reviewers here? Is there anything you'd like to ask us about processes, about where we see things going?
I think also a difference between the reviews of yesterday's and today is that your reviews support people's dreams. And there are not that many people that can afford €500,000 equipment, but you all review them. Because of the dream. And the reason why I think that is if you read one review of a product, and at the end of the review, I think, gee, what a great box. I need to have that box. Then I read the next review, I think, maybe I have that box. And if I then look at the price, there may be 10 times price difference. But the review is all, wow, I gotta have it. I guess that you do that because you want to support people's dreams, that they read about things that are unaffordable, unachievable. But you didn't talk about that change from technical reviewing in the past, in the beginning, until supporting people's dreams today. Can you spend a few words on that, if I'm right or wrong?
Yes. So that's a very good point. I think in terms of what we're trying to do with our publications, you're serving an enthusiast population. You're serving people who want purchasing advice about what they may be in the market for a particular amplifier or at a price or a streamer or a loudspeaker, and we serve that function. But there's always that aspirational function. There are people that read magazines, car magazines, because they want to read about the latest Lamborghini or Ferrari, but they're never going to be buying one. But they do want an expert guide through that product. They want to, as in live vicariously and enjoy that product. And that's part of being an enthusiast, and that's part of the fun of what we do. So it's serving two audiences. Do you guys want to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are two parts to this. One is Stereophile. We started somewhat after Hi-Fi News. It was 1962 with the notion that we wanted to evaluate equipment based on how it sounded. But the goal was to evaluate the best available equipment. And we've never, we've never wavered in that goal. Meanwhile, the price of the best available equipment has gone from maybe $1,000 to several $100,000 or even $1 million. That doesn't cause us to give up our aspiration. And many people might ask, well, is there a correlation then between cost and performance? My answer is, based on my experience with it, absolutely there is. It's not one-to-one, it's not uniform. But if I pick up a $100,000 pair of monoblock amplifiers, it's almost always going to perform better than a $10,000 pair. So that issue of trying to evaluate the best is very much part of our mission still. If I were a car magazine, maybe you want to evaluate the latest economy car. It's important, but at the same time, you also want to get out on the track with the sports car and see how they go. As to the larger question of value, what I like to say is value is a value. It reflects the values of the individual buyer, which in turn reflects income, importantly, resources, but also how you're after a certain point when you all have enough to eat and a roof over our heads, how much you are willing to put into this. So many people have fancy cars. I drive a 15-year-old pickup truck. I have a very fine hi-fi system. My hi-fi system costs more than any car I would be likely to test drive. And so it is also, this is what I mean. It's a question of values. It's more important for me to have the best music in my life than it is for me to have a very fine car, for example, or an extremely large house.
Yes.
That's it.
Good point. Luba, you have a question?
Yes, just to be fair to the audience, I want to say I'm a colleague and a friend of four gentlemen here. So, you guys, you're right. You do lab measurements. You take photos of the product. You have to proofread all the articles. You have to think about like every letter in the review. And then there's somebody on YouTube who's just doing unpacking video and has far bigger reach in terms of just the audience. How does that make you feel, and how can we get more reach if we are just doing way more work and we put more effort into it?
Or shall I start with this one? I think the point is everybody has to start somewhere. When I started, I had editors above me. You're not an expert day one. You weren't in my day. You weren't an expert day one. So you had people who looked out for you. They taught you the ropes, basically. They taught you how to write, because it's not straight. There has to be a beginning and a middle and an end to the story. Taught you how to write, and you learned all the skills in terms of magazine production. And you went to school as well to learn about the law, because there's certain things, certainly in print, you cannot do and you cannot say. It's slightly more Wild West on the internet. That's got some way to catch up. So there was a long process, and also it's about context and it's about experience. Everything we do is grounded in years, if not decades, of experience, and that's what we offer. So notionally, if you just value what YouTube does versus a print publication on the numbers, commercially, shall we say, is possibly missing the point. There can be, 100,000 people looking at a really entertaining video. Whether or not that informs a purchasing decision, or whether it's just entertainment, is another matter. I think that what we do is we offer work that's grounded in experience, and I think that the audiophile understands that. Would you agree?
I would. I do still, though, feel I need to make the point that it's the Wild West. There are many different approaches and levels of competence in the among the YouTube reviewers, and whereas I think we come from a print tradition which is not unrelated to news reporting. I think everybody on this panel has a sense of ethics that we approach our subject with. We feel we need to be honest with our readers. We also need to be fair to the companies whose products we review. That's also important. And so it all has to be done in a certain professional way. And that's our expectation of ourselves, of our magazines, and of our contributors. On YouTube, there are people very much in that same tradition. There are some excellent reviewers with high ethics and incredible production values. There are also people who are quite influential, actually, who will review a piece, who will buy a piece on the used market, review it positively, and then sell it for a profit. This exists. There are a large number of of YouTube reviewers have affiliate links. So you will click. You say, "Oh, I loved this product." You click on it, and it takes you to the website, and they get a cut of the sale. Now, of those two models, the last is the least troubling, but it raises some conflicts. We've been accused of having our own issues where our review systems often contain loaned equipment. Like anyone else who works in our industry, we can get our products at a lower cost than the consumer does. These are long established practices, and if you want to say that's a source of bias, I'm not going to disagree with you. It's just a matter of evaluating the relative importance of these various sources of bias. Just one more point. This is there's an excellent video reviewer that commented on this question of whether we are objective. The answer is absolutely not. Okay. And I mean, all sources of bias aside, the very notion of evaluating equipment subjectively based on how it sounds, how it presents music, how it makes us feel as a music listener, that's not an objective process. Now, many of us, maybe all of us, include measurements in our publications. That part's objective enough. But the whole notion of evaluating a component in terms of how it affects our experience of music, there's nothing objective about it. But to just summarize the main point here, be careful who you're taking your opinions from, especially if you're on the web, if you're listening to YouTube reviews. Understand their motives. They may be excellent, they may be clean, but they also may not be.
Rocco.
Yep. On part of the question by Luba, is focused by the process to produce the magazine. And I want to point my finger in this kind of process. Every one of us, before to be Hi-Fi enthusiast, is journalist. And this means that we are professional journalists that understand and have to answer to the ontology of journalists. We spend, I think, 1/4 of our time to produce the magazine. That means to following the news, to following the agency, to following the normal daily work of journalists. Of course, we are speaking of Hi-Fi. Of course, we are passionate on Hi-Fi. I think that before the Hi-Fi, we are passionate on music, live music and instrument and so on. But the idea that we are following a professional way to produce a magazine is that perhaps the big difference between our job and the most important part of the mass of YouTubers, bloggers, and so on. I have a really huge colleagues that are journalists and use a different way to speak to the audience through YouTube, through the blog, and so on. They are how can I say, authority. They have authority as we have, but a large part of the YouTuber is passionate, is enthusiast, and you can find the difference between who invests for a publishing house, and that means also on video, instead of the normal one camera and please send me a box and I will review it.
Jamie,
Yes,
follow up on that?
Yes, I'd like to make 2 points. First of all, what Jim and Rocco mentioned is very important. And it's not actually limited to print, of course. I mean, as you said, there's YouTubers that are very trustworthy, that really do good work. There's a lot of online media that is really great and well made. So it's not exclusively print that has this kind of ethical high ground, but it is all about working, as you say, ethically, being honest in what you do. And that's the most important thing. Now, just to reply to Luba's remark about how does it make you feel, I think you have to I have a positive worldview. It's not a zero-sum game. So the fact that somebody has an unpacking video that is seen 2 million times and that my review is maybe only read 10,000 times, I don't see that as a problem. I mean, good for them. It doesn't detract from what I'm doing, I think. And I think as well that readers nowadays are quite more savvy and more educated than we often think. Because, of course, we do work in a silo, and it's a tendency of journalists to sometimes forget that readers or viewers are, of course, human beings that are smart as well, hopefully. And they also know the difference between an unpacking video and a review that has got measurements. So, just to add a bit of positivism to this discussion. So I think that's an important part.
Yes. Yeah. And I think most enthusiasts are intelligent. They understand the difference between something that's just popped up and the value of heritage and experience. I think that really does count for something in what we do. But I also want to, I suppose, I'm going to swerve slightly from something that Jim said about there's nothing objective about subjectivity, because we all have our own biases and we're all passionate about what we do, listening to music, and that's what we're describing, how it makes us feel. Now, if you know anything about my work, I'm fairly test based, fairly objective based, and I've spent 40 years measuring an awful lot of equipment, but the measurements that we still do now are grounded in those original measurements from the 1950s, which of course were never designed to actually tell us what anything sounded like. That's important. So again, if online or elsewhere, if you see products that are basically rated in terms of how many zeros they have in distortion or how wide the filter noise is or something, it's largely irrelevant. That isn't going to tell you how something sounds, and it's not a good way of grading anything. So there's still an awful lot of work that needs to be done in terms of correlating all of those measurements, that jigsaw puzzle, as I call it, of measurements, with what we're hearing. and then how you kind of cross-correlate that with the individual preferences of a particular reviewer, because you could give the same product to two different reviewers, two really experienced people, and they might still come up with a different sonic impression because
Absolutely.
they have a different way of looking at things. Welcome, Matthias.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I know you have a limited amount of time.
That's true, as always.
As always. So I'll hand the floor over to you if you would like. We were talking before about, I said it's how group testing, how reviewing has changed. And we had a conversation about how group tests are not the way that they were, and how we approach multiple product reviews. If you want to tell us about that in Stereo Magazine.
Well, my general opinion is when you look back, let's say 40 years, middle of the 80s, the typical test in the big Hi-Fi magazines was, for example, 6 or 8 stereo receivers from Japan for 700 Deutsche marks at that time each. That was a typical test. And at that time, there was a big broadband or wide broadband of qualities. So we had, let's say, if we had 8 receivers from Japan for 700 Deutsche marks, you had 2 winners, or maybe very good receivers. Then you had maybe 2, 3, well, maybe 4 average, and then maybe 1 or 2 losers. So by reading this review, this test, afterwards, you said to yourself, good that I have read this review, so it kept me away from buying some not so good product, because there was a big broadband, big distance from the best to the at least best, or to the worst one. And today I have more the feeling that there are not so many really bad products on the market. So we have to do with lots of good or even better products. And the Hi-Fi enthusiast reads the magazine not because he needs an exact advice what to buy, but we accompany him with his hobby, and he looks at new products, he reads about sound, and I always have the imagination of a typical stereo reader coming out of his office in the evening, and he walks by the kiosk and sees, oh, the new stereo, the new issue is there. He buys this issue. He does not read the issue on the bus or the train while going home, but in the evening he sits down in his chair and he puts on this Hi-Fi system and he celebrates the new issue. This is, by the way, our new Hi-Fi exclusive, so very exclusive stuff, and he enjoys the reading, and in his imagination, it's like he has this unit or the speaker in front of him and what the sound might be if he had this there. So it's high-end travel. It's an audiophile travel through the magazine and through your imagination. I think that today that's more the case than it was 40 years ago, where you need clear advice, what to buy and what not to buy.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. We actually touched on this earlier when we were talking about.
I see. Sorry.
Well, no,
No,
it's
this was
important
great.
about actually we're serving an enthusiast audience, and that living vicariously, which is what you're saying, imagining what would be like to own that equipment and listen to that equipment, is all part and parcel of what we do.
Yeah, I tell my reviewers that what they do, the most important, there's a description of the product, the technology, and all of that, but the most important part of what they do is it's a listening journal. It's their experience with the component, how it made them feel, what they listened to, how it made them feel, and then a summary in the end of the whole experience. And by the way, importantly, this probably varies among the different magazines reflected on this panel, but a typical review, every review in Stereophile reflects at least a month's experience with living with the product. Many will spend 2 or 3 months before writing it up. So it really is, it's integrated into the system, and they live with it the way that a customer would live with it, and then they report on their experience.
Yeah, it's like a sensitive, something sensitive. You get the imagination, how it could be if you had this. And a good review gives you a sensitive touch of the sound, of the experience. of this unit.
In publishing, it's what we call the user experience. That's really important. That when you're reading an article, as a reader, that you feel that the reviewer actually has used it and felt it and gives you an impression of how all those controls, how tactile they are. That's really important. So, but Rocco, you were going to say something.
Yes, one of the most important part of our magazine is the test part. That means that inside the review, the reader can find a 3 different levels of review. The objective one that is coming from a laboratory, the experience of people that work in our laboratory. The director of laboratory is a guy that understands and knows all kind of technology. He's experienced, he's 40 years of experience. So the deep that is in the test of the magazine, the 2 pages of measurement of the test is the objective part. But there is also the second part, that is the user feeling, as Matthias says. It's simple to use, the human interface, especially with digital, the streamer these days, and describe why and where and the technology and what kind of circuit is inside, what kind of news, what kind of difference between the last generation of the same or different brand. And the third part is perhaps one of the most important part is the listening test. Listening test, we are describing what is the condition, what is the other component of the system, what is the experience, what kind of music we are using. Often is we reported the title of the disc and the second of the music that we are using to test the products and the condition and everything. The goal is simply give all the information needs to the readers to choose if that component is good for what he need for his system to enjoy at maximum level the music that is at the end the reason that we are here to reproduce as the best music.
Thank you, Rocco. I'm just looking at the time. We have 5 or 6 minutes left. So I think this topic was about the evolution of reviewing. I want to bring this right up to date now and throw this open to the panel to discuss how we think AI and Google, etc., their use of AI in using our content online, how that actually affects, how that's going to affect online reporting. So who would like to kick off with this one?
I'll comment. My main answer is I really have no idea, but that doesn't keep me from talking. I will keep it brief because I am aware I don't have a whole lot to say. I do think, right now we're in a position, it's a real threat to what we're reporting, because you can now talk to Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT and ask, well, which amplifier should I buy? And it will mine our websites for the answer to your question, but you will not get a link to our website. So there's no way for us to monetize that directly. It is a threat. On the other hand, and the other aspect of this is that I feel that, look, there are certain companies out there. There's a company called Suno, and its job is to use AI to make music, right?
Yep.
Now, if you think that an artificial being can generate a thing that reflects deep experience of the human experience, to me, that's a very cynical view. But if you believe that, then you can probably also believe that an AI can write a product review. I think that's an area in which we're free and clear. Any product review which is written by AI is going to be a fake product review. They're going to exist. I'm sure they probably already do.
They do exist. Yeah, they do exist.
Yeah, but it's not going to, and I hope it's identified as such. Often it's not. And probably won't be. but that we are safe in human beings must write reviews of how people experience music through their systems. There's no alternative to that.
Jamie?
Yes, well, I think when we talk about AI, I'm not very happy, of course, that this exists, because I believe in a broader cultural sense, it's quite a destructive technology that's been unleashed upon us without much thought, which is a pity. Of course, with the reviews, like Jim says, it's basically a kind of theft machine. And that might sound like a very harsh thing to say, and it's a very handy technology, so we're kind of ignoring that. But an AI-written review, which will turn up, and it will be hard to identify the AI-written review from a human one, is basically made up. So it might look like a review, but it doesn't actually reflect any kind of experience with the product. And the fact that this can happen and this can be published is a major problem, I think. And it's, of course, a major problem in terms of the business sense, because the traffic disappears to online media. I'm kind of thinking that there will be a backlash to this, just like we see a lot of young people reaching for CDs and physical media. And we're talking about 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds are buying physical media, and because they're not very happy about how streaming services kind of push music towards them, which means it makes it very hard for them to actually go on their own discovery journey.
Yes.
And I think that probably we'll see the same when it comes to like print media, for example.
Yes. And I'd say, when it comes to AI, good luck AI in making up the test and measurements, because it can't do that.
I look forward to the day when KI replaces me, so I can live on as a Hi-Fi reviewer virtually, wherever. Why not? Or I just feed the machine with some words and the rest is done by...
I think it's impossible to model you, Matthias. The algorithm is not...
That was the first thing I said. Oh, as soon as AI can do my job, then go to the booth here and have some presentation, have some workshop. As long as AI can't do that, I'm not afraid of it. I was told that the majority of people, they don't recognize the difference of human-made music, spread by Spotify, for example, and AI music. And so when I think back 40, 50 years, we were, wishing for the new album of our supergroup, superheroes like Genesis and Supertramp and Pink Floyd and whatever, and the new album that was something holy, and we heard this for weeks, and today music has become so interchangeable often, and also the artists seem to be very much interchangeable, or maybe it's just because I'm an old white man and don't realize the quality of the new music, but maybe in the future it's not so important whether a human being is behind the music or AI. And maybe in the future it's not so much important if Matthias Böde writes a test or just gives some catchwords and AI does the rest. Maybe nobody will recognize.
Well, I think the discussion about how people consume music now or over the decades is possibly a subject for another occasion. I think we have to wrap up now. So I would just like to thank everyone on this panel for their time, and especially for our kind audience. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope it's been of some interest to you. And come and see us next year.
Paul, can I just say one more thing that I think it's important for all of us on the subject of AI? This is a good opportunity to make a pledge, right? And I think it's something that we're all going to be willing to make. I use AI on the back end of the magazine very effectively. It's made my life a bit easier. But Stereophile will never publish a word that was generated by AI as long as I am the editor. And that's I make that pledge to all of our readers.
We as a pledge, we use no AI in any of our... It's really old school. Photography is all done by hand. Subbing is all done by hand. Layouts all done by hand. There is no AI in this magazine. And until I'm cold and in the ground, it never will be.
Let's see what you're going to say next year.
Yes. The way things are going, right? Anyway, guys, thank you so much. And thank you to the audience. And enjoy the rest of the show. I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.